Good morning, it is Monday the 12th of January. I'm Maeve McMahon and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis live on Euronews. Coming up today, all eyes on Iran. EU leaders from Brussels to Berlin have called for imprisoned Iranian protesters to be released. The country was plunged into blackout last Thursday after mass demonstrations spread due to dire economic conditions. Authorities have responded with internet shutdowns, arrests and lethal force that has brought about hundreds of deaths and arrests, according to human rights groups. For more on this, I'm joined here in the studio by Maria Tadeo, Euronews' EU editor. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning.
Tell us, what do we know so far and what has the EU reaction been?
Well, yes, Maeve. What we know is that we've had protests now for 2 weeks, which originally started because of a currency crisis, a local currency plunging against the dollar. The protests extending into the weekend on the streets of Iran, but not just. We also saw protests all across Europe, which hopefully we can put up on the screen in Berlin, in Paris, The Hague. The organizers say that these protests are in solidarity with the liberation of the people of Iran. We've also had reaction from the European institutions. The head of the European Commission put out a statement over the weekend in which she said, "We unequivocally condemn the violent repression of these legitimate demonstrations, and those responsible will be remembered for being on the wrong side of history." And this point of the well-being of people who are taken to the streets of Iran is incredibly important, because that is the red line that the international community has set out, and is the red line, most crucially, that President Trump has set out in these demonstrations. They should not turn into a violent crackdown from the regime. It should not turn into a bloodshed. And now, of course, over the weekend, we also had a human rights group from Iran based in the United States. They say they have now reason to believe that over the course of 2 weeks, 10,000 people have been arrested and almost 500 killed in violent confrontations. I should note, however, and this is also the case for Euronews, it has been very difficult to get footage out of the country. It has been very difficult to establish a connection because the phone lines are down, the internet is not working, and in some ways the country now really is a sort of black hole. Very difficult to establish connection from the people of Iran externally, but also for independent media to really get a sense of what's going on in the country and the scale of it, of course.
So what should we expect in the next few days?
Well, the big question, and this is really the question now, is will there be a sort of military intervention from the United States into Iran? Of course, a lot of this is coming off the back of that operation in Venezuela, which shows not just a military show force from the United States, but also the velocity and the accuracy of a speed operation that they're able to carry out. President Trump over the weekend again repeated, when it comes to the United States, nothing is off the table, and a military intervention is possible. Let's take a look.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
And that was, of course, President Trump. Very strong options. We know one of those options could be a military operation. The extent is still to be determined. There will be a debrief tomorrow from the U.S. administration. And then, of course, the biggest question mark of all, it's not the first time the U.S. hits Iran. Remember, they did that on the nuclear facilities, 3 nuclear sites last summer in another very targeted operation. But the question that remains is, will the United States aim for regime change? And what is the definition of regime change? Because we saw in Venezuela, they just extracted the head of it, but the regime in Caracas is still fully in place. So the end game, really the final goal here, that is still the big question mark. And also, what's the response from the Iranian regime? What could that look like and what could that be?
Well, they've certainly said they would retaliate, haven't they, Maria Tadeo? Euronews' EU editor, thank you so much for all those details and for speaking to us here live in the studio. Well, beyond Iran, the EU, as you know, is juggling multiple crises from Tehran to Kyiv, Caracas to the Arctic. There's uncertainty on every front. Our reporter, Ida Sanchez, takes a look at world events that could shift the world map as we know it.
Hello 2026. Goodbye, world order. 12 days into the new year, and the world is already in disarray. Just look at the map. First, Venezuela with the unexpected capture of Nicolás Maduro. The former Venezuelan president is now in the US waiting for a trial. Delcy Rodriguez is now in charge without big changes, with the blessing and close supervision of the US. What's next for the country? Nobody knows. From the Caribbean to the Arctic, Trump is now fixated on Greenland. Will he force his ally Denmark to sell the island? Will he invade it with the argument of national security? The frozen territory is rich in natural resources. President Trump wants the rare earths. Meanwhile, the world's eyes are on Iran, where the regime is facing a hard time. As citizens' protests grew, the regime ordered an internet and communications blackout. In Ukraine, a peace deal seems to be stalled, and Russia has tested its new hypersonic missile. The war is approaching its 5th year. And don't forget about Gaza. 2026, a brief escalation or a turning point for the international order? We will find out.
We will find out. And of course, whatever happens, we will break it down for you here on Euronews. And actually, for one perspective, coming up, we'll be joined by Dominique de Villepin, the former Prime Minister of France. A close advisor to President Jacques Chirac, Dominique de Villepin gained international recognition as Foreign Minister for refusing to support the US-led war in Iraq back in 2003. And last summer, he founded a new political party in France, La France Humaniste. So good morning, Monsieur de Villepin. Thank you so much for joining us from Paris live this morning. Great to have you with us. First, I want to talk to you about the EU-Mercosur trade deal. It got over the line on Friday despite the opposition from France. Do you think France will still block it when the European Parliament vote takes place?
Well, I think there is a very strong consensus here in France of all the political parties to refuse such an agreement based on the idea that there is not enough reciprocity in this agreement. So it's not a position against any kind of trade agreement. It's because for some groups in our country, and mainly the farmers, we believe that the agreement has not reached the right point, and still we should have been negotiating in order to better the agreement.
But French opposition actually forced Brussels to pull out all the stops to convince Italy. So the agri-sector has already gotten several concessions, like advance payments from the CAP in the next budget, and also reducing tariffs on imports of fertilisers. Is this not enough for France?
Well, reciprocity means more because we see on the environmental side, we see on the health measures that we are still not yet able to protect our population and protect our farmers. So the consensus that we see politically is threatening the survival of the government. So it's a major issue, very symbolic of the kind of fight we want to deliver, and also an expression of what we do expect from Europe. And even if the agreement has been negotiated for 26 years, we can see very clearly that all the elements have not been integrated, and we did not find the right balance in a moment, and we must admit that, where the worries of many groups like farmers is at a peak. So again, this is something that has created a lot of disturbances, a lot of worries in the French population.
We've seen that on the streets of France, even though the Commission would argue that the benefits for EU companies outweigh the risks for the French farmers. But I also want to talk about Iran. You've said that the EU must take their own initiative here rather than follow the US agenda. So what should Brussels be saying when it comes to Iran's future? What leverage do they have here?
Well, what we see is a very severe crackdown on protesters. There is a changing position of the leadership in Iran, and we must find the right balance to not make things worse. And I think we are at a point where all around Iran, in every city, big cities, small cities, the protest is growing. This is a movement of the Iranian population against the mullah's regime. And any foreign intervention will create a new situation and give the possibility to the regime to even increase the repressive movement and policy.
So that's your message then to Donald Trump?
Behind the mullahs.
Is that your message then to President Trump?
Exactly.
Do not intervene.
Do not intervene. Put as much pressure as you can. Try through dialogue and by any means to create a new situation that might create the awareness for the Iranian leadership in order to measure the consequences of their act. But what is at stake now is not only the mullahs. We know how important are the groups, the army, the Basiji, and also all the Revolutionary Guards. So we are not sure that even through an intervention, we might not create a situation of chaos that will be even worse than the situation today. So we must be very careful. The United States is already engaged in many different situations, many different theaters. In Venezuela, nothing has been achieved yet, and the people of Venezuela is still waiting for results. So being engaged in such a region like the Middle East without knowing at all what would be the consequences, I think this would not be responsible. So seizing the UN, having the Security Council involved, of course, this is a matter of worry for everybody. Even Russia and China, they have a lot of interest in Iran. They have no interest in creating a chaos situation. So I think through dialogue, through awareness of everyone, through strong pressure, and there are many, many unofficial ways to pressure the Islamic government, I think that we might be in a position to halt and stop the current situation in Iran.
Okay, Dominique de Villepin, thank you so much for joining us live from Paris this morning.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. Well, as you're noticing, Donald Trump's return to the White House has sparked a storm of uncertainty. His administration's threat to take over Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark, has also put NATO in uncharted territory. An alliance built on the idea that an attack on one is an attack on all now faces the very unsettling possibility that one member could target another. Jakob Yanis reports.
Donald Trump once won a Nobel Peace Prize. Despite the critics, his actions show he really does want peace. A piece of Venezuela, perhaps a piece of Cuba. And now he's officially coming for the whole of Greenland. Here is the logic to carve it up. Trump claims the Arctic is crawling with Chinese ships. He mocked Denmark for defending the island with just one more dog sled. In reality, Greenland already hosts a massive US space base. And Denmark was recently running huge NATO exercises on ice. And that very ice is melting, which means new shipping routes and access to rare earth minerals, which is that stuff inside your smartphone. But we saw the blueprint in Venezuela. Washington doesn't just want security, they want the assets too. And the tactic? Trump's envoy Jeff Landry is currently ghosting Danish diplomats. Instead, he emails locals directly to bond over hunting and fishing. That's sweet, but don't be fooled. Fresh off the Caracas raid, the White House warns that using military force is always an option. And European leaders are furious. Chancellor Friedrich Merz says borders are not up for negotiation. But here is the uncomfortable truth. If the US can threaten to annex a loyal NATO ally, do we even need enemies?
Well, that's it for this edition of Europe Today. We'll be back again tomorrow, so join us then. Thanks for watching.